To our short webinar on how to make an Agile and DevOps transformation successful. My name is Tobias Sager. I'm the managing consultant of Digital Architects Zurich, and I'm with Peter Pedros. Peter?
I'm CEO and founder of PEDCO and creator of Applied Safe and specialist in scaled agility.
So thank you. Thanks for being with us as well. And welcome to all the participants of the webinar. We are going to talk about what makes an Agile or DevOps transformation successful. Want to give you an introduction as well on the capability levels that we devised as a maturity model to assess Agile and DevOps transformations, and want to show you how we conduct such a fitness check that we use to work with companies on assessing maturity levels. In case there are any questions, you can use the chat function, and we'll answer those questions at the given point at the end, potentially. So first, to show you, what's the challenge actually that we're looking at. So when we look at digital or agile transformations, we believe that it's important to keep three key areas in focus. The first area is technology. Let me go back one slide. So first area is technology. The second one is operating model and processes. And the third one is culture. The good news is that technology is available, right? There's the cloud, there's artificial intelligence, continuous delivery, are stacks that are easily nowadays, I'd say, established. The challenge is that we need to focus not only on technology, but also keep the operating model and culture in place to be successful ultimately at a transformation. Also for operating models, there's, for example, DevOps or site reliability engineering that we can use and to support the transformation and establish a new organization required. And culture, however, we see is rarely addressed. And is still a key, because you want to have an innovative culture, right? You want a culture that is open to change. You want a customer focus as well. So to be successful at an agile transformation, and that's the key takeaway here, you need to look at three key areas: technology, culture, and operating models. Now, what we see happening is at various companies that there's pieces of things done in all those areas. However, the effort is not really, focused on bringing those three areas together, but is spent in either of those, which then leads to gaps between technology and model and processes or culture, or even a culture clash, right, between maturity of different organization parts, right? One organization is focusing on a new software delivery model, for example, while the other one is still focusing on a very restrictive and maybe slower change of culture of change. And this can lead to a clash, and obviously can lead to a very difficult and, in the end, unsuccessful adoption of transformation. And for that, we have devised the Agile and DevOps Fitness Check to actually look at those areas and find the gaps and suggest potential improvements. Now, how did we do that, right? Or what's the underlying methodologies and cultural values and capabilities that we use? There's actually, we base it on what we call the LEADS best practices. And LEADS stands for Lean, Agile, DevOps, and SRE. So we analyzed all of those methodologies and extracted the key capabilities and the key values out of it. Then we used three models that we already had devised. So we had the Scaled Agile framework, where PEDCO is obviously an expert in, right? We have the Digital Highway for continuous software delivery by Digital Architects Zurich that we devised, and the effective SRE methodology, which is looking at the more of the operational side of the transformation by leveraging site reliability engineering. And based on the cultural values that we extracted from LEADS and the models that we used, we were able to devise 5 levels of agility with capabilities attributed to each level. And this is what Peter is now going to introduce to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. So we have a continuous Agile and DevOps target capability model starting from the level 0 to level 4. Level 0 means that we already do something. Of course, we have an operating system, we can survive, so we have an existing product, we will do DevOps. And the question is, how do we go into Agile product delivery? So it's very hard to step from level 0 to level 4. And of course, we want to assess you where you are. And we have 3 layers for that. We have one which is about technology, tooling, and automation. Then we have operating model and processes, roles, workflow, what you're going to do. And at the end, we have mindset, principles, and culture in place. And this is a very important aspect which will follow if you're doing something. And this is just not an arrow, what we have here now. We have a lot of specific attributes which are in place if you reach a specific level in the capability model. So this is way too much text to show or to go through in such a short webinar. Just to pick one example, we have here on level 3, continuous deployment on the operating model and process. We ask them, do you have somehow prioritized features? They're according to their delivery capacity established, so that we know these features we will do, and we have a high confidence that we can really reach that in a cadence-based development. That we have engineering practice in place, for example, that we can do incremental deployment, that we have feature toggles, that we can do canary releases, and that we have these engineering practices in place. Then, of course, it's also important that we have product management collaboration, that business development and operations is working together, and that we see evidence that this is really happening. And these are the parts which we are looking at in the assessment with the target capability model. Tobias?
If we look at another example, right, in the levels and focus on technology as well, or the tooling side, we see on level 1 that we call continuous integration, what we believe is critical to establish. And I can tell you the good news is that according to studies and what we find as well in the market, that about 80% of companies are able to achieve this on a technology level. And are able to establish, build servers, are able to establish continuous integration and static code analysis, typically, for example, through unit tests that are continuously run or run in a daily routine, right? Typically, companies are also able to establish backlogs, at least for products or programs and teams. And potentially, they even go so far as they can really deploy applications in an automated manner, not only in integration, but maybe even further out. And this is really level 1 when we look at the technology and tooling level. But obviously, this is now to develop, right, in cadence as well with the other levels, as Peter just described.
Good, thank you. So with that, we developed together with digital architects and PEDCO, we developed together the Agile and DevOps Fitness Check. And what we usually do is that we first agree on an approach of how we want to do that fitness check. Typically, we start with a guided self-assessment through questionnaires. There can be online as well now in COVID time. Before we did that usually in place. And then when we have that, we analyze the existing documentation and artifacts. As probably you have described your process in the wiki, you have some documents, some PDFs, everything which you just have in place. We're going to analyze them. And based on that questionnaires, on the self-assessment and the existing documentation, usually we plan for some role-based interviews and workshops so that we really see where we had some measures or some indications that something is not clear for us, that we can make sure that we really understood it well. So we have these interviews and workshops. And then at the end, we're going to finally consolidate these results, analysis these results, and provide you a report and a review. What you have as a deliverable usually is that you have a current capability level analysis. So you know that you're level 2, level 1, and how you stand probably with your competitors as well. And that you have a gap analysis, and we can give you some prioritization, some work packages, and an implementation roadmap in order to reach a targeted level. So you know what the next steps will be to reach level 3 probably. So, and you also get a final report, and we will present that to our customers, to your board, whatever you would like that. Of course, it's we do that as an external company, and this has a benefit that you have an independent assessment based on market best practice. We see a lot of other companies as well. So you have an Agile and DevOps assessment for your maturity levels conducted by the Swiss leading Agile and DevOps SRE experts. And you have a roadmap at hand where you really can say, okay, this is what I should do in the next steps to reach my target level. And this is something that is not, this is something that comes with a standard price. We start usually at the price of 45,000 Swiss francs. And this includes usually 15 to 20 interviews with different stakeholders as well. We have described our fitness check in the web pages of PEDCO and of Digital Architects, and you can look that up as well. And we used up about 50% of our time for that webinar, and I would like to start the question session with that. Are there any questions right now? Or Tobias, do you have something to add?
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
I have a question, Peter, if you don't mind.
Yes.
It's Mark Ramani speaking here. Actually, if you can go back maybe to the 5 levels of maturity model, and Tobias mentioned that many company has reached the level of continuous integration. And this is what we see on the market. Yes, that's right. Now, my question is related to this maturity model and to this 80% of the companies who already reached the continuous integration maturity level, right? So the question is the following. In order to go from continuous integration to continuous delivery, maybe can you tell us, Tobias, in few words, what are the key capabilities needed here? Because this is where many teams and many people are looking towards that level, right?
Yes. And there's, if we just take, you know, this slide as an example, I believe it's quite obvious, right, what you need to do. There's obviously a technology component that you need to address, right? You need to go from beyond just building software to actually deploying software. You want to send software not only into an artifact repository, where then an operations team takes it and releases it, but you actually want to automate this process. And at the same time, you also need to establish that, you know, the crossing of the boundaries between those teams. So you need to enable both the development teams as well as the operations teams in shipping software, right? You need to have them working together. And this is typically something that you would address in the operating model piece by looking at, you know, for example, site reliability engineering as capability that would enable an organization to build a tool chain for shipping software, not only into an integration stage, but also further out into later stages, be it now QA or production. And at the same time, obviously, you know, establishing SRE sounds easy, right? But at the same time, this obviously requires further changes in how people, you know, communicate, how people collaborate as well. So you need to think about, how can I make this change? How can I adjust the organization so that the collaboration starts to be more closely intertwined? Does that answer the question? And maybe just, this is obviously just an example how to go from level 1 to level 2. There's even more technology behind it. There's even more capabilities. And the further you go, you know, the more mature you need to get in all those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe something that I can add, we have here evaluation of releases, value based on feedback. This is where Agile really puts in. It's based on feedback that we have shown fast feedback cycles in place as well, so that we involve the customers and that we really see what the people are saying about our system, that we integrate very fast and that we can deploy it, and probably, as it is said by SAFe, that we're going to release soon to the customers as well, and that we always deploy to the production. So this is really something, that some practices that really help to have that culture in place and to live these principles.
Thank you, Peter. And this is giving me maybe another question, because you are mentioning now this evaluation of the risk value based on the feedback, which is a mindset, a culture capability, right? So the question is, how are you going in your roadmap to address this culture transformation, right? What is your approach here? This is one of the statements Tobias mentioned, is that this is one of the things which are rarely addressed by teams and companies. So as PEDCO and digital architects, what is your offering here? What is your approach, let's say?
That's a funny thing, Makram. Thanks for the question. It's always like easy to say, we need to have a different culture, but at the end you have to think about what means that to have a different culture. And a culture is usually defined by Mr. Kotter, that it's something that you don't have to think about anymore. It's something that you just do automatically. It's something that is in place. And so what you can usually do as a company is you can't just say, we want to have a culture of trust, for example. What you need to do is you need to define, say, hey, we want to be a trustworthy company. We want to work with trust together. That means that, for example, our governance is changed, that we trust you that you can book your own flights and your own hotel at your discretion, that you have your own decisions which you can take. And finally, if you really have those processes in place, these practices in place, and you have done that several times, that you don't have to think about it anymore, then it becomes a culture thing as well. So that means you need to have clearly defined process when you go and ask for feedback. How do you provide your solution to the customers? How do you make sure that you have questionnaires for the feedback as well? So this is something that you need to take in place, and this is doable, and the culture will follow at the end. And this is something that has really been proven by several instances. Is that answering your question, Malcolm?
Yeah, thank you.
Good. I check in the chat box. There is no question. We have several participants. Don't be shy. Just type in your question here, the question box. Well, if there are no further questions, I think that we can close this session. Tobias, do you have something to add?
Absolutely not. That's fine for me. I guess, just if there's any, further question that comes up after the webinar, just reach out to us, right? You have the contact information here. As Peter mentioned, details on the fitness check is on both of our websites. Go there, download the fact sheet as well, and make sure you spread the word and get in touch if you want to have further details or discuss about the potential engagement for your organization as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, I wish you a wonderful, beautiful sunny day from Switzerland. This is Peter Pedros.
Thank you.